Absolutely. Here's a fully fleshed out story for your unlimited Spider-Man universe. I wrote it as one continuous narrative, keeping it long, immersive, and in a classic Spider-Man tone while introducing Shocker as Spider-Man's first villain. Unlimited Spider-Man number 1. Shockwaves in the City. Peter Parker's first week as Spider-Man had been a whirlwind of small victories, awkward mistakes, and the growing, gnawing realization that being a hero was nothing like the comic books he loved so much. He had stopped a mugging at a corner store, returned a lost wallet to a grateful old man, and even swung into the occasional traffic accident to save someone just before a bus could flatten them. But none of those moments compared to what he would face tonight, his first real villain. It started with a report on the evening news. J. Jonah Jameson's gravelly voice, somehow even louder than usual, blasted from the TV in Peter's cramped apartment. Spider-Man is a menace, I tell you. And now his so-called heroics have drawn a new criminal element out of hiding, a man calling himself the Shocker. Peter groaned, already regretting leaving the TV on while he studied. He'd been hoping for a quiet night to work on his latest science project, something to distract him from Aunt May's constant worry about that boy who climbs walls. The news segment played shaky footage of a man in a quilted yellow suit holding what looked like futuristic gauntlets. With each movement, he unleashed blasts that could shatter concrete and send cars skidding into sidewalks. Peter's eyes widened. Whoa, that's a lot of firepower for a first villain, he muttered, nervously adjusting his homemade web shooters. At Midtown High, Peter tried to focus on classes, but his mind kept drifting back to the Shocker. He glanced at Mary Jane Watson, who sat across the room, idly sketching in her notebook. Her fiery red hair glimmered in the sunlight through the window, and she caught his stare, raising an eyebrow in her usual playful, teasing way. Peter quickly looked down, cheeks burning. Later, at the Daily Bugle, Jameson paced like a caged lion, practically bouncing off the walls of his office. Parker? I want pictures. I want the city to see that Spider-Man isn't a hero. He's a ticking time bomb. And I want that Shocker, whatever that lunatic is, exposed before he hurts anyone else. Peter, notebook clutched in hand, nodded silently, already planning how to swing into the chaos without making Jameson angrier than usual. The night fell, and the city lights of New York glittered beneath Peter as he swung between the skyscrapers. He had done this countless times before, but tonight he felt it. The weight of responsibility, the quiet dread of facing something truly dangerous for the first time. And then he heard it. The sound of a high-pitched whine, followed by a sharp thwang that echoed across the street below. He dropped from the rooftops, landing silently behind a corner. There, in the middle of an empty alley, was the Shocker. His gauntlets glowed ominously, and the force of each pulse made the walls tremble. Cars parked nearby rattled as if they were in the middle of a minor earthquake. Peter's heart raced. This was it, his first real test. He leapt from the shadows, landing in a crouch. Hey, you don't get to just terrorize people with your fancy gadgets, he shouted. The Shocker whirled around, startled, but quickly smirked. And who are you supposed to be, kid? Some new circus act? He aimed his gauntlets at Spider-Man and fired. The first blast hit a brick wall behind Peter, sending debris flying. Peter barely managed to swing away, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. This is bad, he muttered, swinging to a nearby streetlight for cover. I knew it. I knew fighting a real villain wouldn't be easy. The Shocker advanced, grinning under his mask. You know, I wasn't always like this, he said, almost conversationally as he fired another pulse, sending Peter skidding across the street. I used to be just a normal guy, Herman Schultz. I worked hard, I studied, I tried to make it like everyone else. But the city chews you up and spits you out, Parker. And me? I built these to make sure no one ever underestimates me again. Peter's fists clenched. You think hurting innocent people makes you strong? That's not how this works. He fired a web line at the Shocker's wrist, trying to tangle the gauntlets, but the villain twisted, firing again. The force knocked Spider-Man across the street, smashing a dumpster into the side of a brick wall. The battle raged through the city streets, each of Shocker's blasts shaking everything around them. Peter realized quickly that he couldn't just fight him head-on. He needed a plan. He ducked behind a parked truck, panting. Okay, think, Peter muttered. Then he remembered something from one of his physics classes: frequency interference. If he could throw his webs in a way that disrupted the vibration waves of the gauntlets, he might have a chance. With renewed determination, Spider-Man leapt into action. He dodged a pulse, swung around a street lamp, and launched a sticky web precisely onto the Shocker's gauntlets. The pulse ricocheted unpredictably, throwing the villain off balance. Spider-Man seized the moment, swinging low and landing a punch to the Shocker's midsection. Schultz grunted, stumbling backward, but quickly regained his footing. "You're fast." "I'll give you that," Schultz said, smirking despite the chaos around him. "But not fast enough?" Peter gritted his teeth. He had to end this now before anyone got hurt. He aimed another web at the gauntlets, this time with a trick he had been saving for a moment like this. He tied a makeshift web net that would bind the vibrations together and overload the gauntlets. The next pulse fired, and the gauntlets sparked violently. Sparks flew, smoke curled from the seams, and finally, the gauntlets short-circuited. Shocker dropped to his knees, his hands useless at his sides. Spider-Man exhaled, exhausted but victorious. That's how it's done," he muttered. The police arrived moments later, and Peter watched from the rooftops as Shocker was handcuffed and led away. The city had seen its first real villain, and Spider-Man had survived. He felt a mix of pride and terror. This was just the beginning. Later, back at his apartment, Peter collapsed into a chair. Mary Jane called, her voice teasing but warm. "You okay, Spider-Man? I heard about a big guy causing chaos downtown." "I'm fine. Mostly," Peter replied, smiling. "But yeah, first real fight. Not easy." And somewhere in the distance, J. Jonah Jameson's voice still echoed in Peter's mind. "Spider-Man is a menace." Peter grinned, adjusting his mask. He knew the truth. Being Spider-Man was dangerous, messy, terrifying, but it was also exactly where he was meant to be. The night was quiet now, but Peter Parker knew one thing for sure. Villains were out there, and the city needed him more than ever. If you want, I can also write the next story where Shocker comes back with an upgrade and we see Spider-Man's first real moral challenge, dealing with a villain who knows his identity. That would tie the universe together with Mary Jane, Jameson, and Yuri in a bigger way. Do you want me to continue the saga? Got it. Here's Unlimited Spider-Man number 1.5, a lighter, personal slice of Peter's life. It's written as one continuous story, showing his relationship with Mary Jane and a small heroic moment while keeping his identity secret. Unlimited Spider-Man number 1.5, a web and a whisper. The afternoon sun painted the streets of New York in warm golds and pinks, and Peter Parker was late. Again. "Peter, seriously, you're gonna make me late too." Mary Jane Watson called from outside his apartment building, balancing a tote bag full of sketchbooks. Her red hair glimmered in the sunlight, and Peter's stomach flipped the moment he saw her. He dashed out of the apartment, backpack slung over one shoulder, trying not to trip on the curb. "MJ, he started, breathless. "I'm here." She laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. "Finally. You know, some people would call this romantic but I think you're just late again." Peter grinned sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, well, you know me. Punctuality is complicated." Mary Jane rolled her eyes but took his hand, and together they walked toward the small park where she had promised to show him her latest drawings. It was quiet, peaceful, a rare moment in a city that never slept. For Peter, these moments were precious, little pockets of normalcy in a life that constantly pulled him between school, Aunt May, and the secret responsibilities of being Spider-Man. As they approached a tree near the park's fountain, Peter froze mid-step. High up, tangled among the branches, was a tiny, terrified orange tabby cat. Its little claws scraped at the bark as it mewed pitifully. "Oh no," MJ whispered. "We have to help it." Peter's heart raced, not from fear, but from instinct. He crouched slightly, lowering his voice. "MJ, maybe I've got this one," he said, his hands brushing the straps of his backpack. Without further explanation, he slipped behind a tree, crouched low, and in a flash, disappeared into the air. One moment he was crouched in the grass, the next he swung between buildings, landing lightly on the edge of the park roof. His Spider-Man suit was sleek and new, the mask covering his face, eyes wide with the familiar thrill of movement. He spotted the cat. shivering and tiny in the branches. "All right, little guy. Let's get you down," Spider-Man whispered. With careful precision, he shot a line of webbing, looping it gently under the cat's small body. The tabby yowled, but Peter's calm tone and soft movements reassured it. Slowly, he pulled the feline to safety, landing softly on the grass. MJ gasped, covering her mouth. "Spider-Man? You saved it." He gave her a small wave, crouched low, and before she could ask a million questions, he shot another web to swing away, disappearing behind the trees and the rooftops beyond the park. Peter landed back on a nearby building, ripped off the mask, and breathed deeply, feeling the adrenaline fade. He could hear MJ calling after him, though she didn't know where he had gone. She couldn't know. Nobody could. His secret was safe, for now. By the time he returned to street level, MJ was waiting, concern etched on her face. "Are you okay? You disappeared for a while." Peter smiled, holding out his hand. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just got a little lost in thought, I guess." She tilted her head, giving him a skeptical look. "Uh-huh, sure." Then softer, she grabbed his hand again. "You're kind of mysterious sometimes, you know that?" Peter laughed quietly, squeezing her hand. "I guess I just like keeping things interesting." They walked together through the park, hand in hand, passing the fountain where pigeons cooed and children played. For Peter, this was the balance he craved, being a hero in secret while holding on to the ordinary joys of life. The warmth of MJ's hand, the laughter that filled the city streets, the small victories like rescuing a helpless cat. Up above, the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting long shadows. Spider-Man perched silently on a rooftop, watching, listening, protecting, as the city moved around him. No one knew who he was. Not yet. And for now, he liked it that way. Tonight he thought the city was safe. And down below, MJ's laughter reminded him that even a hero could have a life worth living beyond the mask. If you want, I can continue with number 2, where Spider-Man faces Shocker again, but this time with MJ accidentally in danger, ratcheting up tension and emotional stakes while keeping the secret identity angle. Do you want me to do that next?